Imagine trying to build, well, everything from scratch, a whole society. No instructions, nothing to copy, just figuring out how thousands of people can live together, work together. Now think about where that actually happened first, where the earliest versions of, cities and laws popped up.
And that place would be Mesopotamia, often called the Cradle of Civilization, for very good reason.
Exactly. And that's where we're headed in this deep dive. We've gathered a lot of fascinating source material on this ancient region. Our goal really is to unpack how the first cities, the first writing, the first big legal codes emerged.
Yeah.
Right there between those two famous rivers.
Right. Mesopotamia, the name itself, it's Greek, isn't it?
Yeah, land between rivers.
The Tigris and the Euphrates. We're talking modern-day Iraq mostly, plus bits of its neighbors. And the key thing, it was incredibly fertile.
That fertility, that's the linchpin, isn't it?
Absolutely. Reliable agriculture meant people could stop wandering, searching for food. They could settle, grow more food than they immediately needed. And that surplus, well, it changed everything.
Because suddenly, not everyone had to farm.
Precisely. You get population growth, you get people specializing in different jobs, but that creates new challenges too, right? How do you manage the extra food? Organize big projects, handle disputes when you've got lots of people crammed together.
I need systems.
Exactly. Systems, that pressure is what sort of forced the invention of, well, civilization's blueprint.
And over thousands of years, you saw these powerful cultures rise and fall there, building on what came before. The Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, Assyrians.
Yeah, quite a list. But the historian Samuel Noah Kramer, he famously said, history begins at Sumer.
And he wasn't exaggerating, was he?
Not really, because by, 3100 BCE, the Sumerians weren't just in villages. They had proper cities, like Uruk, Ur. And with those cities came huge temples, complex religious ideas, even the wheel. Foundational stuff.
Okay, let's dig into that shift. From small settlements to actual cities. Around 4000 BCE, things really started changing. What made them cities, not just big villages?
Scale, for one, but also organization. We see, actual urban planning, street grids, sort of, massive temples, ziggurats dominating everything, public spaces. It wasn't random sprawl.
It was structured.
Yes, and that physical structure mirrored a social structure.
The division of labor you mentioned earlier.
Exactly. In a village, most people farm. In a city like Uruk, maybe 10 to thousands of people, you get priests, merchants, artisans, farmers. Distinct roles. Our sources, the tablets and ruins, they give us glimpses into this. Specialized skills emerging.
And trade must have exploded then, not just local stuff?
Right. These cities became hubs, trading grain and textiles for things they didn't have, like metal, timber.
Uruk is often pointed to as like the first megacity, right?
Possibly the world's first true city, yeah. By around 2900 BCE, estimates get really high, maybe over 50,000 people.
50,000, that's mind-boggling for that era. How did they even manage that? Sources mention temples, administration, granaries.
It took incredible organization. Those temples weren't just for praying. They were administrative powerhouses, collecting grain as offerings or taxes, managing land, organizing huge building projects. They had to track everything.
So the priests were almost like city managers, too.
In a way, yes. And as Dr. Harriet Crawford, an archaeologist who studied this extensively, points out, the urban revolution wasn't just buildings. It was a fundamental shift in how people organize themselves, socially, politically, creating these hierarchies, these systems. That model just echoed down through history.
It really makes you pause. Organizing thousands of people, giving them different jobs, managing resources on that scale. It completely changed what it meant to be human, didn't it? And it laid the groundwork for, well, how our cities still work in some ways. A massive experiment.
A huge experiment. And all this complexity, it demanded something else, a way to track things, communicate beyond just talking.
Which brings us to writing, another game changer.
Absolutely. Maybe just as big as the city itself. Writing lets you, outsource your memory. It allows for more complex government laws and building a culture that lasts beyond one lifetime.
So how did it start? Cuneiform?
Right, cuneiform. The name comes from Latin, cuneus, meaning wedge, because of the shape of the stylus they used on wet clay. It began around 3200 BCE. Pretty basic at first, almost like pictures, mostly for keeping records.
Like counting sheep or jars of oil.
Exactly, tracking goods in those big temple storehouses. Very practical.
But it didn't stay simple for long.
No, it evolved fast, became more abstract, representing sounds as well as ideas. Suddenly, you could write down almost anything, not just lists, but hymns, letters, laws, like Hammurabi's Code.
In literature, The Epic of Gilgamesh.
The big one, yeah. Written down in cuneiform. It shows the incredible leap in what the script could do.
So culture itself could now be, like, permanent, stored and shared accurately.
Precisely. Much more reliably than just oral tradition. And this led to the first libraries, like the famous one at Nineveh, the Assyrian capital, huge collections of tablets.
And it's wild, but that story is still unfolding. You mentioned recent AI developments.
Yeah, it's fascinating. New AI tools, some just coming online around 2025, are making it way faster to translate these tablets. So we're potentially unlocking lost myths, more details about daily life, things hidden in the clay for millennia. It shows how powerful that invention really was.
It really hits home. Taking language, putting it outside the body, something we rely on constantly now, emails, books, everything. It started with pressing wedges into mud. Incredible.
And as these societies got bigger, managing them got trickier. Just relying on custom or a ruler's mood wasn't enough.
Too many people, too many potential conflicts.
Exactly. That pressure cooker led to another huge Mesopotamian step, codified law.
Moving from, like, arbitrary decisions to actual written rules everyone could see?
That was the idea. And the most famous example, the one we have pretty complete sources for, is the Code of Hammurabi, around 1754 BCE. And it wasn't just a scroll hidden away, it was carved onto a big stone stele. Public display.
Putting it out there for everyone. That feels important. What kind of laws were on it? All 282 of them?
Oh, a huge range. Business rules, trade regulations, property rights, family stuff, marriage, divorce, inheritance, and criminal justice, of course.
That's where the eye for an eye thing comes from, right? Lex talionis.
It is, yeah. That's probably its most famous feature. Although looking closely at the code, it wasn't always literal. Sometimes it was about financial compensation. And crucially, the penalties were different depending on your social status.
So not quite equal justice.
Definitely not by our standards, but the idea was about proportionality, a structured response, not just random vengeance.
So why is this code seen as such a massive deal, historically speaking?
Well, it established a kind of legal consistency and state authority over justice that was pretty new. It represented a shift from maybe arbitrary rulings to a published, standardized system. Even with its flaws, you can see the beginnings of principles that echo in legal systems today. The rule of law, not just the rule of a person.
But we have to acknowledge the flaws, too. The sources are clear. It wasn't fair for everyone.
Absolutely not. It was progressive for its time, maybe, but heavily favored the elites, men over women, rich over poor, harsher penalties for the lower classes.
So it's complicated, a first step, but a flawed one.
Very much so. But you see humanity grappling for the first time on this scale with how to create a formal, documented system for justice and social order. Even if it was messy and biased, it was a start.
And looking at that first attempt, with all its biases, how does that help us understand the, centuries-long struggle to make legal systems fairer?
Beyond the practical stuff, law and cities, Mesopotamians had this deep spiritual dimension. They saw the gods everywhere.
Controlling nature, human fate.
Yeah.
Everything.
Pretty much. Their whole worldview was shaped by it. They had this huge pantheon of gods.
You hear names like Anu, the sky god, Enlil, storms and air, Inanna, love and war, Marduk, who became Babylon's main god.
A complex cast of characters. And the temples, those ziggurats, were the focal points. But again, not just for worship. They were economic engines, administrative centers.
The priests weren't just praying, they were managing.
Oh, yeah. Interpreting the god's will, yes. But also managing temple lands, workshops, storing goods, organizing labor. Religious and sort of state power were deeply intertwined.
And their beliefs gave us some incredible stories, too. Gilgamesh comes up again.
It's just such a foundational text because it tackles the big stuff, right? Mortality, what it means to be human, heroism, friendship, our place in the cosmos, questions we still ask.
And it's so old, predating the Bible, Homer. You can see its influence on later traditions. It's like humanity's first draft of asking, why are we here?
Exactly. These ancient people, thousands of years ago, wrestling with the same fundamental mysteries we do. It's quite profound.
So, okay, these specific civilizations, Sumer, Babylon, Assyria, they eventually faded. But their impact, it's clearly huge. How much of today traces back there?
It's staggering when you look closely. How we measure time, the 60-minute hour, 60-second minute, that's their base 60 math system. Elements of our calendars, basic legal concepts, architectural stuff like the arch, maybe even the idea of formal schools for scribes. The list goes on.
And we're still learning more.
Constantly. Discoveries in the last few years, 2020s up to 2025. New tablets turning up in Iraq giving us details about ordinary people's lives, maybe higher literacy than we thought. Plus new tech helps, digital modeling, VR, letting us, virtually walk through Uruk or Babylon. Makes it more real.
It's easy to focus on all the firsts, the amazing achievements. But the sources also show the darker side, right? It wasn't all progress.
No, definitely not. We have to remember these societies relied heavily on slavery. They fought brutal, constant wars, and they faced ecological problems, too serious ones, like farmland getting too salty from irrigation, ruining the basis of their wealth.
So a complex picture. Innovation alongside exploitation and conflict.
Very human in that sense. But their achievements, despite those challenges, show what humans can do when they collaborate, get creative, build structures.
It seems so much we take for granted. Clocks, laws, writing has roots digging deep into that Mesopotamian soil.
Absolutely. When you wrap it all up, Mesopotamia wasn't just one early civilization among others. It feels like the foundation. The first big bureaucracies grew out of their cities. The first real attempts at history and literature came from their scribes. The first written laws from their kings.
It really is like looking in a mirror, isn't it? Seeing the very early versions of our own struggles and successes as a species, organizing ourselves, keeping records, trying to be fair, searching for meaning.
Their efforts, their innovations, their mistakes, they set the stage for so much of what followed.
So here's a final thought. In our world, obsessed with the next big thing, the latest tech, what can looking way back at these truly fundamental shifts that happened thousands of years ago in Mesopotamia, what can that teach us?
About what progress really means. And maybe how deeply those ancient foundations still shape our modern lives, perhaps in ways we don't even notice day to day. It's something to think about.